We are live from the Devy to Dynasty Film Room podcast. What's up, everybody? Today, Matt Jackson is out celebrating his wife's birthday. So, congratulations, Matt Jackson, on being a good husband. But I'm here with my fellow Matt brother, Matthew Rupert.
How's it going?
And I'm your host, Matt Cooper. And we are here on a Tuesday night. We've officially moved from what we had been recording on Sunday nights, and we all just kind of felt a little stressed by that. It's like, man, I have to watch all of these games live, or I'm going to have nothing to talk about on the podcast. And I don't think our wives were super fond of the idea of us having to watch all of the games live every Saturday and Sunday. So we gave ourselves a little breathing room. We moved. We're recording on Tuesday nights now. So we're here. We're going to get into it. So first, let's talk some Devy, talk some college football, risers and fallers, observations from the weekend. So Rupert, one of my favorite games to watch this weekend was LSU versus Missouri. And it was a matchup of two of the biggest name Devy wide receivers.
Who impressed you the most in that game?
Yeah, so, man, it's tough because they both went off. Like, it was Malik Neighbors on the LSU side, who is really staking his claim as the wide receiver 2 in this class behind Marvin Harrison Jr. And I love Malik Neighbors. He impressed once again. It seems like he's impressed every single week in big games against SEC competition. He's just going off. But the bigger name, I think, at this point is Luther Burden. And I think we got to talk about where Luther Burden stacks amongst all Devy wide receivers at this point. He is he's really staking his claim, I think. Now, if you exclude the 2024 class, if you say, hey, those are the rookies and everybody else is Devy, I think he's staking his claim for being not only the Devy wide receiver 1, but I was looking at doing a mock draft of all non-2024 Devy players. He might be the 101, regardless of position, in Devy right now, which is crazy for me to say because I was not super high on Luther Burden this offseason. I was a little concerned that most of his usage last year was pretty gadgety, behind the line of scrimmage. He showed great after the catch abilities, but I just didn't see a lot in terms of downfield route running, contested catch, all of that kind of stuff on his freshman tape. So he comes in sophomore season and he's just going nuts week after week after week, talking, against SEC defenses, 10 catches, over 100 yards, multiple touchdowns. It seems like every week. I mean, he's got to be on pace to break records at this point. I don't know that I've ever seen a transformation like this from a guy's freshman season just being kind of a gadgety role to his sophomore season being absolutely the most dominant wide receiver in college football. I've been super impressed with the guy. So, I mean, and you know how much I love Evan Stewart. You've heard me talk about Evan Stewart a lot on this show. It's hard for me to put Luther Burden above him because I love Evan Stewart, but I don't know that I can ignore what he's doing at this point. I'm really, really impressed with the guy.
He's already has almost 800 yards on the year, which is bananas. And like you said, it's against SEC competition. So,
and they're like not a super great offense. I mean, obviously that team is surprising a lot of people this year. They're better than people thought, but yeah, I mean, for him to come in there and do what he's doing on a Missouri team that people thought would be outclassed in every game, it's really impressive. Another guy that stood out to me from that game is Jaden Daniels. A few weeks ago, Matt Jackson brought him up on the podcast, and I kind of poo-pooed all over it. I was like, well, he's great with his legs, but I just don't see it with him as a passer. He's outside my top 10 quarterbacks in the class, and I'm coming around on that take because Jaden Daniels just looks so improved as a passer from what he has in years past. He's got incredible arm talent. He's putting much better touch on his throws. He's throwing with better anticipation. He's making better decisions. In the past, he's just been a rushing quarterback. And now, like, he takes that elite mobility and he looks like he's adding a really significant passing element to his game. And if he can put it all together, there's a lot of NFL upside with this guy. So I'm starting to come around on him a little bit. So that was another guy. That's the guy throwing to Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels. We'll see if he can cement himself as a potential first-round pick in this upcoming NFL draft. It's a deep draft class for quarterback, and I'm just so curious to see where all these guys land in terms of the draft capital that they end up getting.
Yeah, it seems like they're definitely going to be like one of those steals, kind of like in the mid rounds where they just kind of outperform their draft stock.
Yeah, I mean, he could be like a second-round pick that has to sit and wait and develop a little bit, but could be like a Jalen Hurts type down the road where he's a late bloomer and all the physical tools are absolutely there with Jaden Daniels.
Great. What was another game that really stood out to you this weekend from the Devy side?
Yeah, I would say the Red River rivalry never disappoints. Texas versus OU. It was another really close game. That game just always seems to be must-watch television. And I don't think that there's a whole lot of Devy upside on the Oklahoma side. But Texas, their team is loaded with Devy players. I mean, you got 4 or 5 guys that could potentially be Devy assets on the Texas side of that thing. But I will say one of my big takeaways from watching that game is I think Quinn Ewers is a fraud. I mean, you're talking about a consensus top 3 quarterback in this draft class, 5-star pedigree. Every time you watch him play, ESPN cannot shut up about how he shaved his head and he lost some weight, and they just act like he's a totally different person now because he doesn't have a mullet anymore. It kind of drives me bonkers.
ESPN for you.
I know. I'm sounding like a hater. It's really just I get tired of them saying that same thing over and over and over again on every broadcast. But I just don't see it with him, man. Like he's a little bit happy feet whenever he's under pressure. Decision making is questionable. He threw 2 really, really bad picks in this one. I think he's only got 4 games in his entire college career, including this one where he's thrown for over 300 yards. And he doesn't have a rushing upside. So like, I don't see elite arm talent. I don't see elite mobility. I just don't know what it is that people love about this guy that makes them think he's going to translate to being a high fantasy point producer for your NFL team. So I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say if you have Quinn Ewers, I would sell and just keep looking for opportunities to sell as many times as you can between now and the draft, because I just don't think he's it. But a guy who did look really good, and I got to shout Matt Jackson out on this one, Jonathan Brooks. So a few weeks ago, we're in our chat. We're preparing for this podcast. And he's like, yeah, I think we need to talk about Jonathan Brooks. He had a big game today. I was like, oh, man, like Jonathan Brooks, I have not seen him get drafted in a single 7-round NFL mock. Like, I don't know that he's a serious Devy name. We got a 30-minute show. I don't think we've got time to talk about a guy like Jonathan Brooks. And boy, was I wrong, because in the 4 weeks, basically, since we had that conversation, he has put up over 100 yards, multiple touchdowns every single week. He's dominating. He's become one of the biggest names that people are talking about on Devy Twitter. I saw Brandon Lejeune, shout out at Devy Deep Dive. Brandon Lejeune, one of our good friends in this space. He said he's got him all the way up to his RB6 in the class. So I just want to give Matt Jackson credit. He was early on Jonathan Brooks, and I kind of shut it down. So he looked awesome once again. He's just making guys miss in the hole. He's got good size. He's got good speed. He looks like a serious NFL player. So shout out Matt Jackson on that one.
So what's I take from this when Jackson throws out a sleeper name, Wisson?
Yeah, it's happened a couple times now.
Yeah.
And, here's me over here acting like I know everything, sticking my foot in my mouth. So, Matt Jackson, if you're watching, I apologize. You can roast me when you come back next week. So
I'm sure he will. Is there any, speaking of sleepers, is there any kind of like sleeper pick for Devy that kind of stood out to you this weekend?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a homer pick here. Casey Concepcion. This is NC State, true freshman wide receiver, Casey Concepcion. He, obviously I watched the games being a State fan, but he is just earning a ridiculous amount of targets. He's separating. He's electric after the catch. So he's a little bit undersized at 5'11". I think he's 187 pounds, but that's not like terrible size.
That's not bad for a freshman either.
He's not like a prototypical X. He's more of a slot guy at this point, which is exactly how NC State's using him. But he is earning a high target volume as a true freshman. And I think, you project a couple years down the road, if he produces for 3 years on the college level like this, he's going to be a name that we are definitely talking about for NFL prospects. And I have seen NFL traits watching him. So he's a guy that's probably not drafted in almost any Devy leagues, but you want to get him on your radar.
Sounds good. Is there any stock down guys from this weekend?
Yeah, I would say, you got to say Raheem Rocket Sanders, 8 carries for 15 yards. I know he's coming off an injury. I think this is his second week back after missing most of the beginning part of the season. So maybe he's not fully healthy. We don't really know a lot of details, but he put on a lot of weight this offseason, and I question whether it was good weight because, he was already big. Now he's listed at 242, like for a running back. Like, there's not that many guys that are physically gifted enough to carry 242 pounds and still be able to do the job of a running back, especially at the NFL level. You're talking Derrick Henry and Thunder Thighs AJ Dillon, who really isn't very good. And that's like it. Everybody else,
Jacobs going back
215, 220, 225, but 242 is big. And I just don't know that Rocket Sanders has the juice to carry that kind of weight and do his job. And he's averaging less than 3 yards per carry so far in the season. Ooh. So I hope he's playing through injury, because if he's not, we got major problems. And I'm very concerned about Raheem Sanders.
If you had him on one of your Devy rosters, would you sell or just try and hold out hope and that he is just playing through injury?
I think you got to hold, because this is a guy that was going at the Devy 104 in most leagues. Like it was Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Drake May, and then Raheem Sanders. This is a guy that you invested a pretty penny in. If you sell him now, you're selling pennies on the dollar. If you've got shares, I think you've got to hold and hope that it turns around. And this is a big name. It's a guy that if he has a couple of good games, the hype train's going to get rolling. At some point, you might have a window where you could sell him for better than what you could get right now. But this is a guy that I think the upside for him, with the prototypical size, with the background is, he's a converted wide receiver, so he's got pass catching chops. I wouldn't sell low on him. I would hold at this point.
Gotcha. All right, so let's move on to the NFL side. What are some of the big takeaways you took out of the Sunday games this week?
Yeah, so I think Puka and Cooper Kupp was one of the things I was watching for. Can they coexist? And the answer unquestionably was yes. It looked very much like kind of a Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods deal. You saw both of those guys get over 10 targets this week. And I think you could see that consistently moving forward because they both get open. And so the targets are earned and they're both target hog type of players. Stafford, he's healthy. He looks great. They pass it a ton, so there's plenty of volume to go around. And I would say that both of those guys are must starts moving forward. And, I wish that I had bought low on Kupp.
Yeah.
Because, for a contending team, he just looks like the same difference maker he's been the last few years. He looks completely healthy. He looked great this weekend. I wish I'd bought low on some Cooper Kupp with this injury. And good luck buying Puka at this point.
Yeah,
he's got to be. I don't know where I would have him in my rankings, but he's got to be a top 12 dynasty wide receiver at this point. Probably even higher. I don't know. I'd have to look at my rankings, but good luck buying him. He's going to cost probably 2 firsts plus at this point. Nobody that has him wants to get rid of him, especially after seeing it with Kupp on the field and he still dominated. Good luck.
Yeah. That buy window's gone for sure. That Rams offense is going to be so fun to watch the rest of the season. Like you said, Stafford looks so good. The O-line's doing a decent job protecting, and they're just going to air that ball out, and it's going to be great to watch.
Yeah, what's an observation for you from this weekend?
Yeah, I want to go back and hit on Justin Fields. I watched that game in depth. Watched them all 22 on him. He looked really good, as evidenced by his fantasy score this week. The good news / bad news is that like it could have been way better. He could have had 5 touchdowns and 400 passing yards. He missed Darnell Mooney 3 times on some big chunk plays down the field. He also missed DJ Moore for yet another touchdown when DJ beat his defender by like 3 or 4 yards. And then DJ Moore also stepped out of bounds. Maybe stepped out of bounds. Who knows? Allegedly. Controversy on Twitter.
Allegedly.
Yeah. So there could have been a couple more touchdowns in there, and then really big chunk plays to Mooney that were misses. There's still some concerning things that you kind of see with just, kind of staying on the first read. It's also a little concerning that basically all the routes were just comebacks to DJ Moore, and then all the yardage just came on Yak. No other wide receiver caught the ball. It was all like outside the numbers, comeback routes. I don't think it's going to work every week, but hopefully, they're able to game plan going forward, and things still improve for Fields. And I will be watching pretty intensely. Sold 1 share this past week and regretted it almost immediately.
Well, 40 fantasy points will do that, but
yeah, for sure.
But he did. I mean, he looked really good, and it's nice to see improvement from the guy. And you just hope that he continues to process more quickly and get the ball out and not hold it too long and not take all these sacks and get more involved as a runner. And it looked like the play calling was a little improved this week. I saw one where they like had a play action rollout. It was a designed run. I was like, oh my gosh, they called a designed run. What is this? So yeah, definitely good to see the improvement from him.
Agreed. It was also good to see DJ Moore just kind of getting the respect he deserves, in my opinion, just showing that he is a true wide receiver 1 for a team.
Yeah. DJ Moore looked phenomenal. And I actually went up in Scott Fishbowl. I went up. The guy had Justin Fields, DJ Moore, and Cole Kmet. And so my week was over before Thursday night was over. It was like halftime on Thursday night, and I was like, well, there goes my week.
Yeah.
And then he had Travis Etienne too, so I just got absolutely demolished. But
it happens. It happens.
It does happen. One of my takeaways watching this weekend is that Breece Hall is back. It was really exciting to see. I've got a lot of Breece Hall shares. He is my Dynasty RB2. He has been, even through the struggles early in the season. And I just think what he showed at the beginning of last year, what he showed as a prospect throughout his college profile, he's just so talented. He's so young. And I've been really hoping that he would fully bounce back from the ACL, and it looks like he has. So I was really encouraged by that. Even as early as week 1 this season, I thought he looked healthy. He's cutting well. He looks explosive. He looks like the same guy we saw last year. But now they've officially said he's off the snap count. He took 22 carries this week, broke off a 70-plus yard touchdown run. He just looks fully back, and I'm really encouraged by that, because sometimes you just see these injuries linger, and sometimes it can take multiple seasons for them to look like themselves again. So really happy about what I saw from Breece Hall this weekend. Yeah,
he just exploded through that hole. It's really impressive to watch, especially coming back from the ACL less than a year ago.
His movement is so efficient too. Like when he's navigating a line of scrimmage, none of his movements are wasted. He's really quick with his feet, but then really bursty when he sees that hole. And he's got contact balance. He's a great receiving back. Like he is the full package. And I think he's probably, for me, he's closer to being RB1 than he is to being RB3. Like he's close. Now that I know he's fully healthy, he's up there close to Bijan for me. And I think 3rd place is a pretty distant 3rd place.
Roger that. One of my observations was on the other side of that Bears game, on the Redskins side. Logan Thomas getting like 1 million targets and the receivers basically getting none is pretty alarming. I was pretty high on a lot of the wide receiving core for the Commanders, but really was hoping to see that Dotson breakout year this year, and it's just not happened. So I would just continue to fade those wide receivers, and it doesn't seem like it was, a matchup issue with the Bears. They're not really known to have walk down corners right now. So it's just really concerning and weird to see the lack of targets for their outside receivers. Terry McLaurin's not doing too much this year. I think Curtis Samuels is their, number one scoring fantasy wide receiver.
Yeah, that's weird to me.
Yeah.
Sometimes it comes down to like the quarterback finds his favorites or gets with what he's comfortable with. The weird thing is if you look at Logan Thomas, like he was heavily targeted week 1 and he was heavily targeted this week, but the weeks in between he was barely targeted at all. So, I don't know if that's a game plan thing or what. It seems like maybe Sam Howell's more comfortable throwing over the middle of the field than really getting outside the numbers. But yeah, whatever the reason is, I mean, you're right. You can't feel confident starting McLaurin or Dotson at this point, which is just tough. I mean, Dotson at least is young, so you can hold him and believe in the talent and hope that things turn around. But it just does not seem like there's any chemistry at all between Sam Howell and Jahan Dotson right now. It's been a disappointing year for sure. So, and Logan Thomas, I mean, he could probably be had for a 3rd-round pick, and you could throw him in a flex spot and feel okay about it, especially in a tight end premium league. So I don't hate Logan Thomas as a contender buy, but there's definitely going to be some dud weeks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, well, let's move on. Speaking of buys, let's move on to some buys and sells. And there's one that we got to talk about because I see it on the show sheet. I completely disagree with you. We're going to go at it. It's going to be fun. So tell me about your first buy, Matt Rupert.
I would buy Gabe Davis. Now, granted, do not send a first for him. Do not send a high second. But he was a guy that last year came in the year with a ton of hype. His value was pretty sky high coming off that 4-touchdown performance in the playoffs. So everyone was thinking like, oh, he's definitely going to be like a 1,100-yard, like 10-touchdown guy next year. And then that just did not materialize last year, right? And I feel like this offseason, like you couldn't sell him. Trust me, I was trying to sell him all offseason in a rebuild I have, and I just couldn't get anything. So the reason I put him as a buy is I think he's like a good kind of like post-high sleeper buy right now where you could get him for like, a 3rd plus, a late 2, something like that. He's sneakily like wide receiver 14 on the year right now. And the reason why I've been, more impressed with him this year is I've seen more route tree from him, right? Last year and his rookie year, he was pretty much just like a 9 route and post guy. He was getting like big chunk plays from Josh Allen. And this year I'm seeing a lot more nuances in his route. He's doing out routes. He's catching comebacks. He's doing ends and stick routes. So he's, getting more catches all over the route tree instead of just 9 routes and post deep balls. So it's encouraging. He's, been producing pretty much every week this year. So he's the guy that I would be targeting to try and buy low on.
Okay. Yeah, I completely disagree. I would sell him off of this. Like you said, you could quote, oh, he's wide receiver 14 on the year. Look at that. He's like a borderline wide receiver 1, and he's still just 24 years old. Like, man, go get you. I mean, the fact that you would buy him means that there is a buyer, which means I can sell him, which I'm very excited to do. I mean, the guy has had over 4 targets twice this year. Twice. Volume is earned. Targets are earned. He's not consistently earning targets. I mean, you look at some of these box scores, and we don't do box score scouting, but 2 catches for 32 yards, 6 for 92. That's pretty good. That's one of his 2 weeks where he saw more than 4 targets. 1 catch for 35 and a touchdown. 3 catches, 61 and a touchdown. So he's still living off of these big plays and touchdowns. He's scored a touchdown each of the last 4 weeks. You think he'd be anywhere near wide receiver 14 if he wasn't catching a touchdown every week? Like, that's going to regress. So for me, I think he's still just this boom or bust big play guy. You're going to throw him in your lineup, and there will be some big weeks, but there will be some serious duds too, because volume is king in fantasy football, and he's not earning volume, and I don't think he's going to. I think we know who he is at this point. Stephon Diggs is going to get the volume in that offense, and then the rest is going to be spread out. That's going to be kind of there might be a couple weeks here and there where Gabe Davis is going to get some volume, but it's going to be spread out between Kincaid and Knox and Gabe Davis and James Cook. And the only guy that you can count on to get consistent every week volume in that offense is Stephon Diggs. And so to me, I would take this opportunity, like you said, all offseason. You couldn't even beg a guy to buy him from you.
Yeah.
And now there's a sell window. So I would sell Gabe Davis, and I would feel great about it. We were talking in one of our group chats, shout out Dynasty Lounge. Somebody said, hey, would you take Tank Dell or Gabe Davis? I'm like, man, I would take Tank Dell and run to take Tank Dell for Gabe.
I would take Tank Dell for Gabe Davis for sure.
Like,
yeah.
And I think you could get that realistically in a lot of leagues. So, anyway, I guess we're not on the same page with this one, which is okay. But
like, I would sell him for a first. I'd sell him for Tank Dell or something.
So if you're buying Gabe Davis, what would you pay to buy him?
At max, like a late second. Like if I'm a contending team,
he's the wide receiver 14. I don't know that gets it done.
If it doesn't, then I wouldn't pay more than that. But I just feel like with like how an owner may have a sour taste in their mouth and be thinking just like you. It's like, I need to get rid of him off these big performances before, he has like 4 duds in a row.
Okay.
So that's the kind of owner you'd be looking to buy him from.
I might package Gabe Davis and see if I could get this guy that I'm about to talk about, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think he's a buy right now in Dynasty. Like, it has been a rough start for him. This is a guy that was the consensus wide receiver 1 in his class, first round draft pedigree, all the traits that you're looking for. And we knew that it was going to be rough early on in his career. I mean, he's sharing the field with Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And it's not like one of these situations where Tyler Lockett looks washed and everybody's on Twitter saying free JSN. Like, no, Tyler Lockett is still balling.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't know how much volume do you really expect this guy to get in this offense that we know is run heavy. They've got Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker. So I think from a dynasty perspective, like, you had to expect a slow start. But I've seen people on Twitter that are panicked about this guy. I mean, he's doing absolutely nothing. And, especially if you're kind of a contending team or borderline contending team and you took him with a top 4 or 5 rookie pick and you were counting on being able to plug him into your lineup right away, and now you can't, like, I think there's a buy low window on Jackson Smith-Njigba, and especially if he finds himself on a contending roster and you could send them somebody that will actually produce for them this year, that's going to be enticing. So Can you take a guy like Gabe Davis and add, I don't know, a couple smaller pieces? Give me Gabe Davis a second and Jeff Wilson or Raheem Mostert, one of these older Dolphins running backs that's not really a dynasty guy, but he might produce for him in the lineup right now. Maybe even like a Kamara, like a just an older, more of a 1-year rental type. So give me Gabe Davis, a 1-year rental running back, and a 2nd-round pick for Jackson Smith-Njigba. Can I get that done? I would love that deal, and I think you could get it done in a lot of leagues. So Jackson Smith-Njigba is a buy for me.
Yeah, definitely agree. The buy low windows here need to, as we've seen in the last couple of weeks, like buy low windows can shut really quick.
Yeah. So, I mean, you had a buy low window on Devin Achane, I guess he's wanting to be called now, which is so weird to me. Anyway, I mean, you had that, like, the first couple weeks of the season, he's like a healthy scratch. He's playing behind Salvon Ahmed. People are panicked about it. Like, that was a buy window in hindsight, but it slammed shut. And I think the same thing could happen with Jackson Smith-Njigba. So, yeah, buy now. I think by this time next year, you'll be really happy that you did that. So you got to sell, Rupert?
Yeah, I'd be selling Zach Moss if I had him on any roster. The fact that, JT came back and, Moss went off for 35, 40 points, something ridiculous. But to me, that was just showed the dominance of the Colts offensive line. There's really nothing special there. I don't know who's, a ton of people that are going to be buying him, but like if you can get anything like a third, fourth round pick, like to me, he's like pretty worthless in Dynasty. So if you can get something, some kind of late draft pick, just to have a, dart to throw in the rookie draft, I would run with it.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you said, who's buying Zach Moss right now? Like, who wants to buy the guy that JT just came back? Like, I don't think you can sell him. And if you could, you're not going to get much. And so at that point, I'd rather just hold the guy. To me, like, yeah, the offensive line has been good. Anthony Richardson has opened up some run lanes. But I've watched some of these games. Zach Moss actually looks good, which shocks me because I've always just thought of him as this plotter jag. And he was that early in his career. I don't know if maybe he's shed some weight. He looks a lot more explosive than I've seen from him in the past. He's made some nice cuts. He's made people miss in the hole. He's showed great hands, which he's never been much of a receiving back, but he's done really well in that department so far this year. And so, and we've seen that he's got to be considered a top tier handcuff. Like if JT goes down with an injury, that's instant, like lock him in, start him every week. He could win you a league. So to me, I'd rather keep a guy like that than sell him for a third or fourth round pick. And, if you're not contending, you hold him. He's not scoring any points on your roster. And then if JT goes down, you can flip him for a second or maybe even more to the JT owner. So I feel good about keeping Zach Moss personally, just with the return that you'd probably get on him at this point. But yeah, I mean, give it a week or two. Jonathan Taylor's going to be back up to speed, and you're totally right. He's going to be on your bench.
Yeah,
but I think I'd just rather hold than sell for peanuts. So I'll give you one more sell in addition to Gabe Davis. I'm going to say that if you can do it, sell the mess out of George Kittle. Okay, just get that guy off your roster.
It sounds like a little bit of angst from having Kittle on.
Yeah, there may be some bitterness here. And I'm not saying go sell for peanuts. I mean, I'm just saying he had a big game. He had 3 touchdowns, but it was only on 4 targets. The volume has not been there this year. He's going to put up a dud more weeks than not, but there's a ton of name brand value with George Kittle, and he just had a 3 touchdown game. I would try to get a decent return and get out because, I've been trying to sell him in a couple of leagues where I have him and nobody's wanted to buy, but maybe I could get some nibbles now after a 3 touchdown performance. I mean, sharp people are going to see that and say, well, he still only had 4 targets. And I'm going to be like, yeah, you're right. I think I would take a second round pick at this point, even in tight end premium leagues, which feels crazy. I mean, he's a consensus top 5 dynasty tight end, but he's old. He's not getting any volume. He's injury prone. You can't feel good about putting him in your lineup. And you're telling me I can get a second round pick for that guy? Okay. I don't know. I'm just ready. I'm done with George Kittle. I don't want to own him in Dynasty anymore. I think the floor is falling out from under him fast. And really, you're just getting value. If you can get anything at this point, it's only because of name brand recognition, I think. So he's a good real life player. I don't think he's a good fantasy player. And I'm only really feeling good about starting him if Debo or Ayuk is out. So, yeah.
I think the only problem is like if you sell him for a second, like who are you playing at tight end? Like the tight end landscape is just so gross.
Yeah. You're not wrong, but on the rosters that I have him, the frustrating thing is I've got a Zach Ertz or a Hunter Henry, and I'm like, I actually feel better about starting them than George Kittle, which feels gross.
Yeah.
But then as soon as I put George Kittle on my bench, he goes off for 3 touchdowns. So he's just frustrating to own right now. And I don't feel good about ever putting him in my lineup, even if I have him. So I'd rather stream the position or play a guy like Zach Ertz than just hold the bag, be left holding the bag on a guy on George Kittle that I can get some value for right now. So he's a sell for me. But we'll wrap it up there, and we'll sign off. So, Matt, tell them where they can find you on Twitter.
At Matthew Rupert FF.
All right. Follow Matthew Rupert. He knows what he's talking about. He's a good follow on the Bird app. And you can find me at Devy2DynastyFR, the number 2, not TO, at Devy2DynastyFR. That's also the YouTube channel. So if you're listening on Apple, you can find the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Devy2DynastyFR. We do film breakdowns. It's a lot of fun. And you can find us next Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. This is when we'll be doing the show now. Like I said, we've officially moved from Sunday night. So Tuesday, 7:30 p.m. We'll be back, same time, same place next week. And leave us a comment, a like, a sub. If you're listening on Apple, leave us a 5-star review. We really, really appreciate it. And thanks for listening. Have a good week.